we move to our substantive topic, which is on democracy, ladies and gentlemen. Um, Democracy. And I've told you that this course, comparative politics, is very empirical, it is dynamic, it is a living course. We mostly update ourselves. So this year, we will be making use of the latest reports by the Economist Intelligence Unit. The latest democracy index is the 2025 version, which carries us through the entire 2026. By the way, this report was released last 2 months, okay, in 2025. That is how they do their report. So this will carry us. Then we also make use of the Freedom in the World report, which is their 2026. Now, check the title, the banner title of the Democracy Index. They say, I want someone to read for me the Democracy Index. What is the banner title? Someone should read it for me. The heading.
Democracy.
Yes, Ibrahim.
Democracy stabilizes after 8 years of decline.
Democracy stabilizes after 8 years of decline. So maybe this is good news for democracy. Okay. Previously, for the past 7 years, you see there has been a general downward trend of democracy. Clearly this year, well, the data will show us why they say democracy stabilizes after 8 years of decline. Now let's look at the Freedom in the World report also. What is the banner? What's the banner title or headline?
The growing shadow of autocracy.
The growing shadow of autocracy. Okay, good. So this year, the two reports are not speaking the same language. Well, let's see how it goes. But previously, they would be speaking the same language. This year, one is speaking about how democracy is making gains. The other is also focusing on how autocracy is making what inroads. All right, but we will look at it. We will first examine what we mean by democracy. Okay, democracy. What is democracy, ladies and gentlemen?
Democracy is a system of government in which the views of the people are taken into consideration. And democracy is derived from the Greek word demos, which means the people, and kratos, which means rule. So the rule of the people, democratia.
Fantastic. This is very excellent. Ibrahim is learning. Great.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so we will be looking at democracy, my dear friends. And as I've mentioned, we'll be using these latest reports. We will define democracy, forms of democracy, and waves of democracy. These are just what theoretical in nature, very conceptual in nature. From there, we will now come to our task as comparativists, where we compare democracies. So when we start comparing democracies, we will make use of the democracy index, the latest report by the EIU, which is the 2025 report. We will use the varieties of democracy, which is VDEM 2026 report. Then the Freedom House report, which is Freedom in the World 2026. So that is our outline for today. Democracy, as Ibrahim has rightly mentioned, there are two there are two distinct notions, okay, views. So when it comes to conceptualizing democracy, there are two distinct approaches. So here we are taking a step further. We are taking democracy a step further. We have the procedural notions of democracy. These are the procedural definitions as well as the substantive notions. So Ibrahim, define democracy again. How did you define democracy? Ibrahim, come again.
Democracy is a system of government in which the views of the people are taken into consideration, or democracy is a system of government. Democracy is derived from the Greek or Latin word democratia, which the demos illustrates the people, and kratia is rule. So the rule of the people in simple terms.
Okay, so that falls under what we call the procedural definitions. So the way he conceptualized democracy, we use the key elements, the procedures involved in democracy, okay, where the people elect their leaders, the people have a say, government of the people, demos. So that is a procedural definition. This focuses on how a regime is organized and the processes by which representation, accountability, and legitimacy are assured. So then we check the different states of the world. Okay, let's see how they are organized and the processes by which even their governments assume power. They did come from the people. Are the people involved? Are they accountable to the people? Are the people given rights, freedoms? So is there free and fair election? And do they have access to sources of information, or there is only one state media that will churn out propaganda? So that is a procedural definition. But the procedural definitions, we focus on how a regime is organized. How is the regime organized? How did they even get their government? How is the government even accountable to the people? How are the people even allowed to operate? Are they given liberties, their freedoms? That is the procedural definitions. Okay, are you with me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So the democratic method, according to Scampeter, okay, the democratic method is that institutional arrangement. The institutional arrangement for arriving at political decisions in which individuals acquire the power to decide by means of a competitive struggle for the people's votes. So you see, Scampeter is telling us that by democracy, we're talking about how a regime is organized. He has added an element of election, where there is a means for struggle for the people's votes, right? That is democracy. That is the minimal or the minimalist approach. The minimalist or the procedural approach. You see, states came out from authoritarian regimes. Most of the states you can find today, especially being in Western Europe, they were initially, as we mentioned the other time, these were kingdoms or monarchs, okay? And so clearly they emerged from authoritarian regimes. So if at a point in time, there is an introduction of election, okay? That is a minimalist way of making the people get involved in governance or in selecting or choosing who represents or rules them. That's why scholars regarded even those baby step approaches, those minimalist reforms as democracy in nature. They are minimalists. Once you adopted some forms of election, some forms of minimal competitive struggle for votes. That could be classified as democracy. It is a term used to denote the particular procedures such as regular elections based on universal suffrage to produce an electorally legitimated government. Okay, all right. According to Schumpeter and Robert Dahl, democracy is an institutional arrangement for arriving at political decisions based on elections or competitive struggle for people's votes. So you see, this is the minimalist. So the focus is just on what? Election, voting. Okay. There was a hand. Please, who raised a hand? Kindly ask your question. Okay, so Foster has also texted here, democracy is a form of government in which citizens exercise political authority by electing representatives in free and fair election while enjoying some rights, competition, rule of law. Good. So that is the procedural definition of democracy. Okay. It also fits into the minimalist approach. Any other question, comments? Hello, ladies and gentlemen. All right, now let's go to the more crucial definition. These ones, we call this what the substantive for definitions. So you are what comparativist. When you leave this class, like when we are done for today, then when people are speaking about democracy, you should have a very comprehensive view of democracy, okay? And then enlighten people when they are speaking about democracy. All over the years, what we have been doing, we've been focusing on the procedural aspect of democracy. We've been focusing on the minimalist, but let's talk more of the substantive. Now, this notion deals with the goals and effectiveness of the regime. We are not just talking about how the regime is organized, whether, free and fair elections and what have you, competitive struggle for people's votes. Those are procedures. But then we talk about the goals and effectiveness of the regime. Now, let me ask this question first. Why do people elect a government? Yes, Deron. Why do you think people elect a government?
So, to me, to solve issues in the country.
Issues, good. Issues such as?
So, road, health,
Fantastic.
education.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Moses, add to what Deron has mentioned.
People elect their representative to come and perform social functions such as building of social amenities and then also infrastructure such as schools and hospitals to improve the standard of.
Very well. Okay. Right. Last one. Why do people elect government? Yes.
To represent the nation or the state.
Okay. All right. To do what? Represent them to do what?
In terms of ceremonial functions and stuff.
No, I mean, those are means to an end. Represent us to do what?
To make laws and stuff.
And the laws will do what?
Will govern us.
Okay. So you see all the points that have been mentioned, Deron, Moses, okay? They've talked about the end goal. Even Owusu Josephine has chatted here in the chat box. People will elect government so their interests can be represented in public decision making, okay? Yes, like the roads, the hospitals, quality education that, Moses mentioned. Now, that is the goal of government. That should be the end goal. So we electing people, we voting for people, those are what means to an end. So with the substantive definition, we move from the means to go to the very goals. What are the ends? To what extent has the government been effective in solving poverty, in ensuring socio-economic upliftment of the people? To what extent are the problems of the people solved? That is the substantive definitions of democracy. So this notion deals with the goals and effectiveness of the regime and the extent to which the will of the people might be served in a more purposive sense. People give their will, people give their sovereignty to the states or to government to protect their rights, right to life, liberties, protection of their properties, and ensure their collective security, socio-economic advancement. Here, particular goals are also envisaged, such that real democracy cannot be defined by process alone. No, not just the procedural. We don't just vote you to represent us. Represent us to do what? Cannot be defined by process alone, but also entails efforts at promoting equality. Okay, equality, fairness, and inclusion. These are the things we expect of government. To what extent has the regime been effective in promoting equality? That these people have good roads, others also have good roads. Okay, you go to region A, well, they are developing, you go to other regions, So we are trying to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor, the well-to-do areas and the likes. Fairness, inclusion, and development. Substantive concerns may affect the viability of an effective democratic system, pointing out the difficulty for democratic procedures in context of extreme poverty. The argument is that if we don't take care of the substantive issues, the end goal of democracy, in fact, we can't even guarantee the future of democracy. Moses, what is your view of that? If we don't take care of the substantive notions of democracy, we cannot guarantee the long-term viability of democracy. What does it mean? Moses?
Please.
Yes, any other? You can raise your hand and then you help address us. If people, yes, Moses, good. Yes, Moses, unmute your mic and speak.
Since the minimum, the procedural view is in a sense that democracy ought to perform some things or tend to achieve what the representative wants. It's also important to also know the ways and the ways in which those things will be met, those needs will be met by the people. If we ignore the ways in which those needs will be met, that means democracy won't be able to achieve its core aim. So, dog, that's what I.
Perfect. Any other to add to what Moses has mentioned? If people need quality healthcare, they don't get it. If people need what? Common products or commodities, they go to the shops, shortage of what? Essential goods and services. If they want this, they go to the shops and then there's nothing there. Even if they have money, they can't buy. And everything that will make life worthwhile, the people are not getting it. There will be a feeling of frustration, okay? And they may even engage in revolution. And so the so-called democracy cannot thrive when people are not able to get those things essential to their lives. So scholars like Held, Sartori, and Sorensen, they have argued that democracy cannot thrive when we have what? Extreme poverty, okay? When the people, they don't have anything, food, shelter, clothing, and yeah, abject poverty. That is going to cause some challenge. Any view? Yes, Bright, what do you think? Bright, what do you think? Do you agree?
Yes, sir, please. Yeah, I agree.
Can you give an example? Okay. So scholars have argued that this includes wider political participation, civil rights and freedoms, and all these, okay, economic and social justice, because economic deprivation leads to economic disempowerment. So with the substantive concerns, these are the things we're talking about. Okay. Our next thing will be to talk about the core values of democracy. These are the core values of democracy. In the absence of any one of these, democracy would be meaningless. Liberty, equality, justice, and human rights. These are the four core values of democracy. Okay, liberty, equality, justice, human rights. And you understand these core values from the social contract theory. And even last week, we talked about this philosopher, which I gave you as the assignment. What is the name of the philosopher? Who talked about some three natural rights? What's his name?
John Locke.
John Locke. John Locke, what was his argument? He said that nature has given people rights, right to life, their liberty, and then right to what? Protection of their properties. And we expect the state to ensure that these are protected. Liberty, very important. Equality, the fact that we have given our powers to the state does not mean that they are above, they are above the law. And so the state should ensure that there is no disparity between the people. At all times, try to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. You put in social interventions to bridge the gap. If you realize that education is so expensive that many households are unable to send their kids to school, and so poverty is widening the gap between the rich and the poor, you come up with social interventions. For example, free education. Now, it doesn't matter whether you have what more money or not. Okay, the system is making it what more equitable. You can go to grade A school even if you don't have what enough money. The least effort or the little effort you put in, because then the state has come in to bridge that gap. Doesn't matter whether you have money or not. Well, then when it comes to health financing, then we've come with the National Health Insurance Scheme. These are ways to ensure that there's what some form of equality in society. At least, at least you will get some health care. At least you will get somewhat education. If you have kids and you do well, you can take them to the local authority school, okay, and then you can monitor them and guide them, direct them. There will be better versions, okay. You don't need to be paying 5,000, 7,000, 10,000 before you get education for your kid. If you cannot afford, the system is such that you also get something, okay, and then when you guide direct, you'll be okay. Justice. The state should ensure that we do not go back to the state of nature where it is what the might that rules, survival of the fittest. No, justice, very important. And you will remember that even Jean Baudin, one of the functions of the state is judicial appeal to ensure there is what justice. And then, human rights, very important. So these are the core values of democracy. Once any of them is broken, democracy will be hanging. These are key features of democracy, which, of course, these are well-known features of democracy, and I will not belabor the point here. Level 200, Poly 214, as even if we take microphone and go to the street and then we meet people, we ask them features of democracy, everyone will tell you at least 2 or 3, right? And so Yeboah-Assiamah will not on any day ask you to mention 3 features of democracy. No, not in this class. But you should know them. Are you with me, Princess Ajiman? You know that there should be periodic elections. So Ghana, every 4 years, we go for elections. Separation of powers, checks and balances. So the executive, is there. You have the legislature, you have the judiciary, checks and balances, rule of law, respect for human rights. And so you see that the core values of democracy, the key features are derived from the canons or the core values. See, but these are the core values, and the features are derived from the core values of democracy. Are you with me? Yes, Ibrahim.
Yeah, so I have a question with regards to the definition of the democracy.
Yes, please.
So when we are given a question like that, will you choose if you use the procedural definition or the substantive definition?
You see, as comparativists, I always expect my comparativists to demonstrate comprehensive understanding of anything I will ask. That's why I asked the question, how many states do we have? I want you to describe and give me the comprehensive overview of states. If I ask you to define democracy, I expect you to give me the 2 notions, okay? The procedural and then the substantive notions. Yes, I want you to give me, right? If a student highlights only the procedural, that is a limited understanding of democracy. Are you with me?
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you for bringing it up. At least it will add some marks to people. Those who would have written only on the procedural, now they will get to know that they have to add the substantive element. All right. And it's very important. These days, even when we are talking about the features of rule of law, we add the economic and social dimensions, right? You will see when we go to the democracy index, even how they classify states, you will see that they talk about the function of government. These are some of the end goals of democracy. Okay, they tend to blend these aspects of democracy. So it is not only the procedural, but more attention, or what is gaining more traction is also the substantive aspect of democracy. Now, let's look at these 2 forms of democracy. 2 forms of democracy. Democracy can be liberal and illiberal in nature. So we can have liberal democracy and illiberal democracy. So anytime you hear that a state is a democracy or it's a democratic one, as a comparativist, you will sit back and then ask a further question. What form of democracy are we talking about? because it is easier to simply say, oh, Nigeria is a democracy, Togo is a democracy, Ghana is a democracy. But what form of democracy are we talking about? What form of democracy? Now, when we talk of liberal democracies, these are defined as those with acceptance of popular democracy and of government by the people. Okay, these are liberal democracy. They accept popular democracy, and so the people are freely allowed to, the people are freely allowed to select or elect government. That is what? Government by the people. That is the popular democracy. But what makes it liberal is where I have highlighted in red, my dear friends. Bright, read it for me where I have added red. Emphasize the red.
Has a distinct concern with limits on the executive scope.
Thank you. Princess Ajiman, read it for me. Princess Ajiman. Samuelina, are you there? Read it for me.
Adds a distinct concern with limits on the executive scope.
Fantastic. So when we talk of liberal democracy is a system where we have a freely elected government. Yes, that one is common. But it adds a distinct concern with limits on the executive scope. So anytime you hear liberal simply means we have deliberately reduced the powers of the executive. We have pruned, like pruning. Those who did agree, you know pruning. What is pruning? What is pruning? Yes. What is pruning? Hello, comparativist. When we say you are pruning a plant, what does it mean?
Cutting away unnecessary parts.
You are cutting what?
Away unnecessary parts.
So you are cutting some parts of the plant, some of the leaves, some of the branches to shape it, or some parts which are diseased, you cut them off. You are giving it what? A nice cut, a nice shape. So that is pruning. Now with liberal democracy, we also cut parts of the executive's power. We attempt to barber the executive's hair. We give it a nice haircut, because too much power will make the government corrupt. You know something? Hello? You know something? Samson was a very strong man.
Yes, sir.
What made him strong?
His hair.
His hair. So if we barber the hair, what happens to him?
He becomes more stronger.
It becomes normal, strong but not too strong. At least Oshewa he can beat you, but not too strong. At least Kakra, but not too extreme strong. That is what liberal democracies do. We try to limit the executive scope. It is a deliberate way to limit the executive scope and power. And once we reduce the scope, we give these powers to the citizens. That is what it means. So in liberal democracies, the scope of the executive is limited, and these are given to the people in the form of enhanced rights. So if you take Ghana, for example, there are many things the executive cannot do on their own. And when you take chapter 5 of the Constitution, most of these have been given to the people in the form of enhanced human rights. The whole of chapter 5 is on the Bill of Rights, fundamental human rights and freedoms. that tells you that that is a liberal democracy. If there are many things, if the government wants to do, they need to resort to the people. They need to come and seek their consent, negotiate with them, bargain with them. Otherwise, the people will take it to court to seek what justice. And as we mentioned, one of the core values of democracy is justice. If you have your land, the government cannot simply come and say, hey, for still we are taking your land. No, that is not how liberal democracies operate. They need to sit with the affected people, negotiate, bargain with them, and then arrive at appropriate compensation. And sometimes we even have to go and settle the person, give them another land, alternative land, if that is what they want. If they want another land, give them another land before the law allows you to take theirs, which maybe you want it because of our national security. You want to maybe make roads, or you want to make a national park, and so their land is of national interest. You need to sit with them, bargain, pay adequate compensation. If they want alternative land, okay, agree with them. Otherwise, they take the issue to court. So in liberal democracies, the people have enhanced freedoms and rights. And the executive's powers, somewhat limited. So liberal democracy connotes limited government. The government needs to rule by consent. By consent, consensus, seeking approval from the people, because it's not easy. But we also have another form of democracy, which also accept popular democracy and government by the people. Yes. So in both systems, they both accept the minimal criteria, where there's acceptance of popular election. But where the meat is where I've highlighted in red. I want someone to read. Gifty, read where I have highlighted in red for me. Gifty, Yeboah-Assiamah. Gifty, yes, unmute your mic.
This is combined with the persistence or even reintroduction of restrictions and limits on individual freedoms and rights.
So in illiberal democracies, even though they will have some form of elections, they don't give out human rights. No. The government combines this, 2x4 popular election with persistence of restrictions and limits on human rights, and sometimes may even reintroduce more restrictions on people's rights and freedoms. So note the difference. In liberal democracies, people have more freedoms and rights, and the scope of the government is limited. The scope of the executive is limited. But the opposite is in illiberal democracy. In illiberal democracy, you have some form of election, but the executive is too powerful. Its scope is almost unlimited, and the people's freedoms are curtailed, constrained, and limited. It is characterized by formal establishment of democratic electoral process. So, because they are hypocrites, they will say, we have introduced electoral process. But the major shortcoming is that the Constitution places it limits the liberties of the people. It limits the liberties of the people, and the executive can use any arbitrary means to rule. Any arbitrary means to rule. Are you with me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that is the difference between liberal democracy and illiberal democracy. So if I describe a scenario to you and then I ask you what form of democracy is this, you should be able to. All right. Now, we also have direct versus indirect or representative democracy. Okay. And we will come to the direct versus representative or indirect democracy. But before then, I have a teaching and learning resource here. Listen with rapt attention, after which I will pose some questions. Okay, are you with me? Hello.
Yes, Prof.
Ladies and gentlemen, so tell me, what did you gather from this teaching and learning what resource? Anything you gathered, anything you gathered from it?
Hello, Prof.
Yes, justice.
Okay. I learned a lot, but I can say that the origin of democracy started from our team. That's where it started from our direct democracy, where the people go, all the people go and vote, but except women and slaves and children that were not allowed. But as the
Fantastic.
population increased growing, okay, I'll end there. I'll end there.
All
Where
right,
I'm going to.
that's good. You will see all. Okay, Ibrahim. After Ibrahim, then Deron. Okay. Yes,
Prof,
Ibrahim.
I learned that in 1215, England's king, uh, he he couldn't have the power to do everything he wanted. He couldn't abuse the power. Limits were put on his leadership. And then Churchill said democracy is one of the worst uh, system of governance.
Continue. West, he didn't say that in a vacuum.
He said democracy
Yes.
is one of the worst systems of government before the previous systems which they used.
So he was trying to speak in a paradox. Okay, it's just like it is a worst form of government, except the other ones which have not been or tried. So the thing is, if you think democracy is the worst, which one is better? That was the kind of argument he was trying to say. So it's like saying that the devil you know is better than the angel you do not know. That was the contest Weston was talking about, Churchill was talking about. And I like your reference to the Magna Carta. You see, last week I mentioned it in class when we were talking about the patterns of state formation. Do you remember? So that is very good. That's the Magna Carta. The barons compelled the king to sign to submit to the laws of England. Okay, Beatrice. Yes, Beatrice. Unmute.
Sir.
Yes.
Sir, please, from the video, I learned that democracy has three branches, which is the legislature, executive, and judiciary. Says the legislature makes laws, executive implements them, and judiciary interprets the laws.
All right. So this government or the state is compartmentalized into three arms or institutions of what government. That is separation of powers, so that each of the arms of government will serve as a check on the other. And this is the doctrine by Baron de Montesquieu, separation of powers. Okay, right.
So I learned that initially when the democracy started, absolute power was vested into the hands of the people. But as time goes on, the authorities realized that all people are not equal. So they started abusing democracy. So 1215, when they signed the Magna Carta with the Queen of England.
Okay, so then issues about equality and the rest. You know, the core values of democracy, equality. So even the king himself was compelled to sign the Magna Carta to, to demonstrate the equality. Thereon.
So
Yes.
from the video, I learned democracy was meant for everyone, but not everyone indeed, because it was limited. It limited the powers of the minors,
Okay.
women, slaves, children,
Very
and
well.
also, yeah.
Continue. Yes, Thereon. Wrap up.
So and also democracy. As time goes on, democracy changed, and many people have different thoughts about democracy.
Okay, that's fine. Very well. So forms, we have the direct democracy where the citizens themselves will come together, okay, debate and reach decisions on matters of common interest. That is direct democracy. This was the practice in what? 5th century in Athens, where, the birthplace of democracy. Here, citizens themselves are the primary agent for reaching collective decisions. All adult members, qualified members, citizens would converge and then will be making what decisions. So the core principle of democracy is self-rule. Self-rule from even the birthplace of democracy, where the people themselves, the citizens and those qualified will meet and make. The word democracy comes from the Greek word demokratia, meaning rule, that is the kratia or the kratos rule. And then the people, which is demos. So demos is for people, and then kratos or kratia, rule or power. So rule by the people or power to the people. That is democracy, demokratos. The model is a form of self-government in which all adult citizens, so note it very well, all adult citizens participate in shaping collective decisions and an environment of equality and deliberation. So in a direct democracy, the state and society become one. Yeah. But all was not well with direct democracy. Of course, it is impracticable even in contemporary times. Now, these were some of the limits. Citizenship was restricted. So even though we say direct democracy, it wasn't everyone that was allowed to take part in the deliberation. When they were going to meet to deliberate, some people were exempted from the process. Citizenship was restricted to men. So note, restricted to men whose parents were themselves citizens. So if your grandparents or parents were slaves, you continue to be slave forever because citizenship was restricted to men whose parents were themselves citizenship. And so the blood in you should be a citizen blood, and then your offsprings. Participation was not in practice so much extensive as claimed. Most citizens were absent from most assembly meetings. So when you hear, you might think that, hey, Charlie, this one died. They have allowed everyone to attend. Obeko, then the whole place will be overcrowded. No, it wasn't so. It wasn't so extensive as claimed. Many people were absent. So issues about apathy did not start today. Today, when PUSA is organizing any function, then they make an announcement for people to attend. Still, you will not attend. You know yourselves, you don't attend. Even though participation is open to everyone, you will not. That was what was even prevailing at that time too. Even though it was open to everyone, only a few would attend. So I'm going to my farm, I'm going to this, I have so still it wasn't extensive. It was hardly an exercise in lean government. It will be difficult to make decisions when many people are present. When you have an elephant-sized government, how do you make decisions when people have their own views? So it was a very difficult form of government. As management consultant will conclude that the system was time-consuming, expensive, and over-complex, especially for such a small society. And the principle of self-government did not always lead to decisive and coherent policy. These were some of the challenges with it. Now, the other form of democracy is representation. So we have direct democracy and representation. At national level, today as we speak, all contemporary liberal democracies are representative, okay? And according to Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the moment a people gives itself representatives, it is no longer free. It ceases to exist. So in contemporary times, people vote their representatives to represent them. So the whole country, whom have we given our powers to represent us? The whole country. We have all voted to give our powers to one person to make decisions for us. Who is that person?
President.
The president. And even at our constituency level, we have elected one person to represent our respective constituencies to make laws for us. Who are these people?
Member of
member of
Parliament.
parliament.
Very good.
MPs.
MPs. So J.J. Rousseau argues that the moment we elect these people, okay, we are no longer free. We have given our freedoms to these guys. We cease to exist because they make decisions on our behalf, whether we like it or not. They are binding on us. Do you agree with J.J. Rousseau? Yes. Do you agree?
Yes, sir.
Yes, that is it. If the president goes to UN and then will make a pronouncement, it is binding. That is Ghana's foreign policy. If he makes a pronouncement that this is Ghana's position, or he'll go and pledge to Haiti that, oh, there has been some natural disaster, so Ghana is pledging 10,000 tons of rice. We are bringing our soldiers to help you to reconstruct your state. Yes, that is the position of the state. And if he gets approval from those you have elected in parliament, yes. So the moment you give yourselves or representatives, you're no longer free, you cease to exist. But in level 300, we will challenge this notion of J.J. Rousseau. Once we give ourselves representatives, we don't cease to exist. We are there, we exist. We can make ways to influence policies. We can use some constitutional means to influence policies, such as writing petitions, sitting with them, jojoing. If they still will not, then
Demonstrations.
demonstration. If they still refuse, then we demonstrate, we protest. But still, if they say they will not do, you can't do focal. Right? You understand that? So still now you will come to J.J. Rousseau's arguments. You have some ways to influence, but still, if they say they will not, then you cannot do anything. You just have to say, hey, so if people will not listen to us, 4 years will come. That's all you can say.
But sometimes it works.
Yeah, sometimes it works. Sometimes it works.
Let's take the demonstration led by Nanado during the 19th, about the VAT. Yeah,
Series of actions. Yes, that's why you can disagree with J.J. Rousseau to a point, but at a point too, he may be right. The two arguments hold. Okay, right. But I wanted you to have.
So it may be right. It may be right when the action that the president takes doesn't really affect the nation, but when it really affects the nation much, it's not right.
Okay. So J.J. Rousseau, that is quite philosophical. All right, now let's look at waves of democratization. Who has been to the beach before? Yes.
All of us.
All of us. Hey, are you sure?
Yes, please.
Okay, now when you go to the beach and then you see the sea water coming towards the beach, what nature does it take? The moment the waters hit the beach, okay? What approach does it take? Or even when you are swimming, then you see the water coming towards the land. What approach does it take? The water will be coming in the form of what? Waves. You see it goes up and down. Doesn't come in a straight line. Okay. When we talk of waves, we are referring to the oscillatory movement up and down. So the water surges up and then what comes down and then goes up, comes down in that manner. That is a wave. So you can you see my cursor? Do you see the cursor, ladies and gentlemen? Do you see it?
Yes, please.
Yes,
So you
sir.
see, these are waves. The thing will go up and then will come down and then it will rise again, and then it will fall, and then it will rise. That is what we call wave. The up and down movement. All right, waves of democratization. Now, in political science, when we talk of a wave of democracy, it refers to a major surge of democracy in history. So we are talking about a period where many states became what? Democracies. A range, period, a time frame where many states what adopted democratic systems. At least the minimalist what approach when they introduced some form of election. According to Huntington, ladies and gentlemen, Huntington, Samuel P. Huntington, when we talk of wave, it involves a group of transitions from non-democratic to democratic regimes that occur within a specified period of time, and that significantly outnumber transitions in the opposite directions during that period of time. So you see, and even when you take Perez-Lenan, 2014, he argues that it is any historical period during which there is a sustained and significant increase in the proportion of competitive regimes. So you see, we mentioned that before then, states were mostly, like kingdoms, monarchs, and these were not what democracies. But with time, they adopted some minimal form of democracy, such as, some form of election. Some members of society were allowed to vote. Now, if you have a period where many states engage in this kind of activity or transformation, we call that a wave. Then there's a wave of democratization. Okay, this period, many states were becoming democracies. But we should also note that while some states are becoming democracies, there are some who are also becoming non-democracies. Are you with me? So between some periods, there are some states which are democracies, but then they will be retreating. They will be going back to non-democracy. So when you have a state, let's say it's a democracy, then the next day you woke up and it is ruled by military what? Military people. Then it means that it has moved from its what? Democratic category to non-democracy. So we are saying that whilst many states are moving from non-democracies to democratic regimes, there are some who are also moving from democracy to non-democracy. But we weigh, if those that are becoming democracies are more than those that are becoming non-democracies, then we can call that period what? A wave of democratization, because at least there were more democracies than those that retreated. Now, if you have let's say those who attend church, if you have a sister Mary, who has been very, dedicated worshiper, and then towards a period you realize that this sister has stopped coming to church, she no longer will pray, you see her engage in some kind of action that you think that these are not the doctrines that the faith teaches. What do you usually say has happened to Sister Mary? What common term do we use? What do we say has happened to Sister Mary? Yes, my dear friends.
That she has gone wayward.
She has gone wayward, but there's a common term that you used.
She has rebelled.
Rebelled. Well, but there's another term. It starts with B.
Backslide.
Backslide, yes. Sister has backslided. Is that not true, Eva?
Sir, please, yes.
Yes, backsliding. She has backslided. So as we have backsliding in that circle, in democracy also we have for backsliding. Now, this concept of waves of democratization was popularized by Samuel P. Huntington, who was a scholar at Harvard University, and I've given you his definition. Now, countries undergoing or having undergone transition to democracy during a wave are also subject to democratic backsliding. Now you know what democratic backsliding means is that those countries which have become democracies, at times they also backslide, and they backslide to their non-democratic period. They go back to their non-democratic status. We call it democratic backsliding. So whilst we expect them to do better in terms of improving their democratic credentials, well, before you realize, some of them have backslided. Are you with me? So let's look at the waves. There have been at least 3 main waves of democratization. Now, during these 3 periods, you saw many countries becoming democracies with few backsliding. So the first wave was from 1828 to 1926. This was a period where many states became or adopted democracies. You are aware that many states, before the formation of states, they were kingdoms, empires, city-states, and all this, okay? And these were usually monarchs and the likes. But the first wave of democratization was the period from 1828 to 1926. This was where nearly 30 countries established at least minimally democratic national institutions. And we are using minimally because it involved only some form of election. Even the election, the suffrage was not open to everyone. In many states, women were not allowed to vote. Even in UK, it will be latter part of the 20th century, okay, latter part of the 19th, from 1950s thereabouts, where the suffrage will be expanded to include women. In many states, it will take a while before the suffrage will be expanded to include minorities in the Americas. Took a while before Black minorities will be allowed to vote. But, we say that they at least adopted minimally, even though it was not the best, but, it's better. It was better at the time because nearly almost all states were non-democracies. So the one that adopts some minimally, democratic credentials, at that time you would say that is okay for the time being, with the hope that with time they will improve their democratic growth. Okay, so we have democratic development. We will talk about that, but you need to come into the threshold before we start to improve. It's just like you go and meet some rascal, some drug addict and the likes, who doesn't know God. Let's say you want to convert the person to your religion. So you go there, you preach, and then the person decides to come to, let's say, church. But even whilst they were coming with their cigarettes. Okay, they're even taking the first step. You should be happy that they have accepted to come. You accept them as they are, allow them some threshold, With time, then you are what? Nursing them, you are nurturing them, teaching them, with the view that with time, they grow from baby converts. They will learn to crawl, they will learn to walk, then they will start running. So the first wave, these ones adopted some minimalist criteria. Now, these states included Germany, Argentina, Australia, Britain, Canada, US, France, and the Scandinavian countries, okay? So this is the first wave, all the way from 1828. You see, many states were adopting some minimal form of democracy, allowing some form of election. You know, many states across Europe and the Americas were engaged in this. But from the 1920s, you see that the first wave will begin to crumble, where many states that were democracies will now go back to non-democracy. So democratic backsliding began from the 1920s, which will begin from Italy. This guy, Italy, Benito Mussolini in Italy. Benito Mussolini was the one that will begin to shatter democratic institutions in Italy. So he rose to power, and he will now want to attack the institutions of democracy. The very institutions that brought him to power, he began to attack them, so that with time he dealt away with all these institutions of our democracy, and he will establish his own system. He calls it fascism. This is military expansionist regime. Very militaristic, authoritarian in nature. So that with time he will even create totalitarian regime where the state will take control over everything. The core canons of democracy will be relegated to the backdrop or to the background. So that when it began from the 1920s, by 1942, Gideon, please mute your microphone. By 1942, this first wave will come to the very lowest ebb, such that the numbers of democracies will drop to a mere number of 12. So whilst it began with some 30, by 1942, the number had dropped to something like 12. So look here. Can you see the cursor? These are the numbers of states. So you see, even though here the number will reach like almost 30 there, okay, when it's reached the peak, nearly 30. But so it started to fall from 1920 when Mussolini will start. Many states will follow suit what Italy has done, and they will also go back to their vomit, which is non-democracy. So there was backsliding to non-democracy, such that by 1940 this has come to its lowest peak. Now trace this lowest ebb to the line, and it is there's few numbers, almost 12. So that was the first wave from 1828 to the 1940s. Okay, all right. That is that. Then you see that it will start to rise again. So you see from the 1940s, then number of democracies will start to rise again. And that is the second wave. This is the second wave. So from 40 to rise to a peak, and then we'll start to come. A distinctive feature was that it was sequential and slow. The first wave was sequential. You see, all the way from 1820, very sequential and slow. But the second wave, this came after Second World War. And you see, last week I told you that the period after 1945 is very crucial in comparative politics. Many things, when we talk about them, age of age of comparative politics, the golden age, it is after the Second World War. When we talk about state formation, okay, then it is also there. We talk about many things, you see it there. So note it. The second wave, it also came after the Second World War. Some of the countries were India, Israel, Japan, and West Germany. These adopted democracy after World War II. And this period was also reversed in the 1960s, okay, and 1970s. So we see that after the Second World War, many states became democracies. But during the 60s, there were a lot of coup d'etat, coup d'etat in many parts of the world, many parts. And the second wave involved many states, but there will be reversals in the 60s and 70s because of some coup d'etats, with some 36 recognized democracies in the world. The second wave at this point, as the total number dropped to 30 between 1962 and then the mid-1970s. So here is the second wave, almost very short period. But the third wave, ladies and gentlemen, began in Portugal in 1974, but it will reach some peak level after 89. What is significant about 1989 and the early 1990s? As scholars of comparative politics, what is significant about 1989 period and the early 1990s? Yes. Hello. What is significant? So, ladies and gentlemen, you see the period 1989, it should ring a bell in the early 1990s. So it should ring a bell about the Soviet Union, the communist bloc. What happened to it? Yes.
The fall of the Soviet Union.
Okay, good. So that bloc, will collapse. And then several successor states will emerge from that. And these ones will take some form of a democracy. Will take some form of democracy. Collapse of the communist regimes in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union. Okay, thank you, Foster. Yes, and so once it broke apart, the ensuing states that came out of that system adopted some form of democracies. So as it is akin to state formation, the wave of state formation, it is also akin to the third wave of democratization, because as they formed the ensuing states, they also adopted democracies, okay, on the go. There was no need to reinvent the wheel. So they adopted democracies with their constitutions, and that was it. It included the historic democratic transitions in Latin America in the 1980s, Asia and Pacific countries. The fall of the Iron Curtain in 1989, the Iron Curtain in 1989, and the Soviet Union itself in the early 1990s eventually brought freedom to a host of Central and Eastern European states, many of which sought closer ties to their fellow democracies in Western Europe, because they had seen what their fellows in Western Europe were doing, developing because of the governance system they were adopting. So when these states emerged, they also adopted democracies. That is the third wave as seen. Let me go back to the image here. Yes, Justice, please, your question.
Okay, Prof. You mentioned iron curtain.
Yes.
I'm not getting it's about what the iron curtain.
Iron curtain.
Yes.
So you see, iron curtain, then it is that symbolic kind of gap between Eastern and then Western Europe. You see, they were all European states, but those from the Eastern Bloc had been part of the Soviet Union, and then those in Western Europe were mostly also capitalists and democracies. So the Iron Curtain was that symbolic and physical boundary which divided Eastern Europe and then Western Europe. And you know that what divided them was just what ideology and governance system. But from that period, that kind of symbolic and ideology will break. Okay, whilst the yes, whose microphone is on? Justice. Yes. So that was the term used to describe, these systems. We call them an iron curtain. It was like a curtain, an imaginary curtain, like separating Western and Eastern Europe because of what ideology. Okay, even Germany, we had what East Germany and then West Germany. You understand? East Germany was more of aligned to the communist ideology, and then West Germany to the capitalists, and then so once we talk of the Iron Curtain, that kind of ideology would break. Are you with me? Fantastic. So that is the Iron Curtain. All right. So usually once I'm talking about this, and I start from 1989, then the early 1990s, because it was like a period. It was a periodization. So here we are. So with the first wave, the period was from 1828 to 1926. But you see, those days when you had a single room, the boys, when you had single room, and then it's a single room, but you have where the bed is, and you have where your furniture is, and your TV. What do you use to separate the two? I don't know whether these days you do that if you have single room.
You use curtains.
You use curtains.
Prof, we are Gen Z. We are Gen Zs.
The Gen Zs, you don't. Yeah. Those days, you come, you see the curtain. Charlie, are you for curtain, pa? So even though it is just what one room, but then you have used a curtain, ostensibly to separate the two. So the term iron curtain was used to, to delineate how Europe was partitioned into Western Bloc and then Eastern Bloc based on what ideological differences. You call it iron curtain. By 89, this kind of thing will almost wane down. Then by 1990-91, the system. So let me wrap up Justice, and then I'll call you in. The first wave, 1828 to 1926. We have states like Britain, France, US. Second wave, which was the period after the Second World War, with these states becoming democracies. Then the third wave, beginning from Portugal, and then it will peak from 1989, and then the early 1990s. Many states in Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, Latin America, parts of Africa, okay, including Ghana, okay, because many states had made backsliding. Ghana had also backslided because we had been in military regime for almost 11 years, more than 11 years if you add the SMC to the AFRC, PNDC. We had been in the wilderness. They had been democratic backsliding. But towards the third wave, many parts of Africa, okay, many states in Latin America, Southern and Eastern Europe, the soldiers will retreat. The soldiers will go back to their barracks and then will hand over power to civilians. That is the third wave. Mostly when the Soviet Union collapsed. Now there is no Cold War. If you were a military regime and you needed support, you couldn't go to the Soviet Union because it is broken apart. The kind of resources that they would have used to support you, it is no longer there. There was only, one hegemony. You have to go to the US and then the Western Bloc. And, if you went there, they will ask you, you want us to help you? You say, yes. If you want help, if you want economic help, well, you go to the Bretton Woods institutions, and the Bretton Woods institutions, one of their conditions will be like, go and what? Democratize. Okay, go and democratize. When did Ghana usher into the Fourth Republic? Which year? Fourth Republic. Sorry? Yes, Fourth Republic. Which year was that? Foster. 1992. So you see, it is part of this third wave, okay? Because it had been in the wilderness of democratic backsliding, and so it will come forcefully during the third wave as well. Okay, Justice, please ask your question, and then we wrap up.
Okay, Prof. If we check the first wave from 1828 to 1926, I confirm from 1926 to 1943, there's a 17 years gap between the first wave and the second wave. I don't know if you're getting me.
Yes.
So during that gap, I want to ask, what was the activity that was happening? Because meaning that 1926, the second wave was dead already.
Yes.
I don't know if you're getting me.
Yes.
And there was no other wave for 17 years before the second wave came.
Fantastic. Yes.
So one question is, so during that gap, what was happening there?
So during that period, there was like a stalemate. States were still going through the period of backsliding. They were wallowing in debt, wallowing in mud. Okay, maybe series of coup d'état upon coup d'état, and that was how society was. It will get to a while before many states will realize and now will start to rise towards a democracy. And so that stopgap where you are not seeing any activity, clearly states were trying to reassert themselves. It could be coup, counter coup, and the rest, or a coup for a very long period. But what if even with the regime that toppled the system, okay, will rule the people over that 15-year period, and so nothing happening. It was still a non-democracy, okay, until perhaps that period will be toppled through a revolution, and then the people will now be establishing, some minimal form of a democracy, okay. That's why you see the long period. Because if democracy falls, clearly then there's non-democracy. And they can be there for a period like Ghana. When the Third Republic fell apart, we went into the wilderness for a long period. Okay, Justice, long period. And so that was the phase, that was the kind of phase that many societies were going through. And usually it's like a bandwagon. Once few states will start to come back to the light of democracy, many others will be following gradually. And then once we have appreciable number, then we call it a wave, because then there has been a surge or an increase, more than those that are backsliding, then we call it a wave. Are you fine, my brother? Fantastic.
Yes, please.
All right. So Next week, we will continue with democratic development. As we said that states will adopt a minimal, but with time they will develop their democratic journey. Next week, we will talk about that. But any question, any comment, my dear friends, it is time. In the absence of any question, comments, Foster, you have a question. Okay, Foster.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Foster.
Please, I realize that you have uploaded another question on Sakai.
Yes, please. Yes, I've
And
uploaded
the
another
deadline
one.
for
It's next week.
Assignment is 18th. And I want
18th.
to plead with
Yes,
you to extend it.
to extend it, okay? Okay. Class, is that a consensus?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Extend to when?
At
Yes,
least
25th.
No, because I'm going to give you another one on democracy. So every week I will guide you in learning. We call it guided learning activity. That's
19th.
what.
So please, to
20th.
Friday.
20th.
Okay, but when is 18th?
Sir, this Saturday.
Yeah, so 18th is fine. So that I can make way for the assignment on democracy, okay?
Sir, please then make it 20 for us.
18th.
Please make it 20th for us.
Okay, I'll do
Please,
that.
some of us are having a.
No, but this one is a time period. So you can start today,
Yes.
you can, so it's not as if that is 18th.
Yes.
You are not to do the
Let's
work on
make it.
18th. It's a period.
Sir, please, can you make it 20th for us?
Okay, I'll consider that. Okay. Whilst
Thank
you
you for.
be
Thank you.
preparing for the one on
Thank
democracy.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. In the absence of any question, comments, my dear friends, we end today's session. Thank you for your time and enjoy your week. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.